to intercept traffic to their country, you'll be more secure at home. Now, instead of stealing your credit card details, that hack is at work. So, access to Netflix's lineups in different countries, and no more spying from your internet service provider. No speed limit, no log policy. If you don't like it, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. And you can grab more VPN at a 70% discount through the link in the description. That's $3.49 a month, plus a month free. Now, Flat Earth calls in a few kinds of people. First, there are the people who believe that the few lines in the Bible alluding to a flat Earth should be taken literally, and then there are the conspiracy theorists who get roped in from the jungle of other conspiracy theories online. And although they're all under the same flag, they don't all agree with each other. For instance, not everyone believes in the dome. Some believe the planet just keeps going forever. Some also believe the Earth is motionless, while others believe it's constantly moving upwards. So as well as the arguments with both cards, there's also quite a lot of differing with each other. The society has also had some critics, most notably astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, alongside pretty much every other scientist on the planet. But it didn't matter. The Flat Earthers had B.O.B., a rapper that no one had heard about in around 10 years. Inevitably, an online dispute between deGrasse Tyson and B.O.B. sprung up in early 2016. It started out with a few tweets. DeGrasse Tyson sees what B.O.B. is posting on Twitter, immediately steps in the ring. The following back and forth on Twitter starts out relatively level-headed, but it doesn't stay that way for long. The very next day, B.O.B. drops a flat Earth diss track on the DeGrasse Tyson, instantly proving all of his points wrong. Neil swings back the diss track on his own. B.O.B. had enough. He was going to. 2017, set up a $1 million GoFundMe to launch a satellite into the sky, set to live once and for all. However, it doesn't quite reach its goal. Not much has happened since. Okay, so potentially millions of people have been voted towards the Earth's plan. But what are their actual arguments? Flat Earthers' discoveries are incredible. Their arguments prove it too logical for scientists themselves. However, there are a few issues with a few of their points. At the base of the society, the Flat Earth model. This is what the entire movement revolves around. There are a few different versions, but they all share the same fundamental aspects. They're flat and surrounded by a walled ice. Here are the problems with that. To get to this model, they've had to stretch countries out, literally to the point where they're actually no longer functional. So, when put into practice, countries on this map are much farther apart than they are in reality. For instance, here is a direct flight from Sydney, Australia to Santiago, Chile, approximately a 7,000-mile journey. UF27 is a 12-hour flight. However, if the world looks like this, you're looking at a distance of around 17,000 miles, and that's going to take a lot longer than 12 hours. In fact, the plane would have to travel at almost twice the speed of sound. Flat Earth's response to this? Flights don't exist. The airlines are in on it, and the flights are simply unable to be booked, or always cancelled a few days before. The multiple videos of people getting on these flights on YouTube are yet to be addressed. Now let's take a look at the potential in on it. Turns out, it's a lot of people. Anyone with a reasonable knowledge of circumnavigation, governments worldwide, scientists worldwide, NASA, and the United Nations. It's even in their logo. And all of NASA's footage? CGI. In fact, Flat Earthers reckon that NASA was actually created to hide the real shape of the Earth in the first place, and is spending billions of dollars a year, all in an effort to cloak the fact that we're living under a dome. Okay, so how do they explain ships disappearing over the horizon bottom first? Heat. If the sun and the moon look like this, how come solar eclipses exist? It's a shadow object that orbits the sun. Okay, their arguments are convincing, but some members of the Flat Earth Society still weren't content, so they thought they'd been done some research of their own. It's 2017. Flat Earther Mike Hughes looks up at the sky. He doesn't believe the lies, and wants to see the so-called curvature of the Earth with his very own eyes. So he plans to build a homemade rocket to do so, but first he needs $20,000. Crowd funds $8,000 and gets to work on building the rocket. After months of assembly, November 2017 finally comes around, but at the very last minute, Bureau of Land Management tell him he's on public land and not allowed to launch. A few months later, he's ready to launch again. This time, it's no longer on public land. However, the rocket doesn't actually work. Quite lucky for use, considering his team forgot to arm the main parachute of the rocket. On the 26th of March, he's ready to launch for a third time, and it finally happens. He soars almost 2,000 feet into the sky before coming back down to Earth. Successful launch, but not quite high enough to see the curvature of the planet. For that, would have needed to reach a height of 35,000. That's Earth, not proven. However, there's a bit more to the story than that. If Hughes had actually wanted to see the curvature of the Earth, all he had to do was fork out $200 for a ride on a commercial airline. Generally reaches at least 30,000 feet. That's a lot cheaper than building a $20,000 makeshift rocket. It also turns out that Hughes is actually a daredevil and has been launching rockets for quite some time. He launched a rocket reaching 1,500 feet in 2014, set up a fundraiser for a launch in 2016, asking for $150,000, but that amassed little more than 300. However, after suddenly preparing himself for Flat Earth in 2017, Hughes managed to crowdfund almost $10,000. So I don't think it's reaching to say that Mike Hughes actually just used Flat Earth as a means to fund his rocket career. Tragically, Mike Hughes passed away early this year after an early deployment of a parachute during his latest rocket launch. Back again to 2018, a group of flat earthers decided to test their theory. Okay, so these so-called scientists are telling us that the Earth is spinning 360 degrees a day, so that's got to be 15 degrees of rotation an hour. We'll see about that. One of them spends $20,000 on a ring laser gyroscope, a device that they can use to measure the rotation of the planet. They then leave it up for an hour. It measures 15 degrees. That measurement didn't count, of course. The gyroscope was supposedly picking up heavenly energies from the sky. So they then put it in a zero force chamber. They wait 1 hour. Still 15 degrees. That's still not. In the same year, another group of flat earthers get to work. Okay, so one guy used our movement to crowdfund his rocket hobby. Another guy wasted $20,000 on a piece of navigational equipment that proved us wrong. Trying to go a bit cheaper. This experiment would require only 3 boards and a 3,000 milliwatt laser. Basic idea was that they'd have 3 boards placed evenly along a 3.88 mile stretch through the Victoria Canal. They'd then shoot the laser from one end to the other, then track where it passed on each board. If it was at the same point across all 3, the Earth was flat. But if the laser passed the lower point on the middle post, the Earth was round. However, when they actually tested it out, the laser beam had expanded over the canal and shone onto the entire final board, making it impossible to tell what point it was hitting. Another failure. Alright boys, one final test. This was basically another attempt at the last test, but with a few key differences. This one involved only 2 boards, a camera, and a flashlight. They cut out holes 14 feet up the boards, then posted them along the same stretch of the canal. If the camera on the other end of the flashlight picked up any light through the holes, the Earth was flat. But if the camera picked up no light, the Earth was round. The camera didn't pick up any light. So far, not much has worked out. However, the Flat Earth Society are currently setting up plans for a Flat Earth cruise, set to sail to the Great Ice Wall within the next 2 years, where the Flat Earthers will finally be able to gaze upon the Great Barrier keeping us all caged in with their very evidence. What they'll say when they realise it's not actually a wall, nobody can say. But for now, the Earth is undeniably flat, but potentially believed. This video is sponsored by Norton again. Gaming is massive. Every day, boots up their PCs, consoles, even phones, go online. It's an industry that's tripled just under a couple of decades and is now actually expected to become the top entertainment industry by the end of the year. Stocks are up, cash is in, and the future looks bright. But bubbling just under the surface of this enormous growth is something sinister. Unspeakable action. Horror's only the most depraved of fathom. $7 digital bridges. An internet requirement for a game that's single player. And is my game supposed to look like that? That man's pen is spinning around. That's a gun pointing the wrong way. And is that an advert? In a game I paid 60 quid for, why is my screen slowly dying? This game has 5 game modes. The last one had 9. Is that how physics works? Don't buy the same game I saw already. The graphics are actually worse than the last game. And the list goes on. Rushed, buggy, and overly monetized games aren't anomalies either. In fact, if anything, the last few years have actually seen more companies jump on board. The process goes a bit like this. You start by licensing a game. This can be a standalone release, or it can be a new franchise. But preferably, it's a sequel in an already well-known franchise with a pre-established fanbase. Once you've worked out the details, it's time to share your grand vision with the development team. And then give them an approachable time frame to make it. Once you're around a year or two into development, it's time for the big reveal. Make sure to push the pre-order bonuses and limited editions. At this point, you can sit back and relax. The game doesn't have to actually be shown for free. In fact, it doesn't even function on launch day. Or ever. But if you're feeling generous, you can finish the game later on down the line. If you played your cards extra well, your game is digital only, and your customer service team gets every refund request that comes their way. Throw in some new boxes and cosmetics, package some extra maps for the same price as the original game, and you're done. Now, some people aren't very happy about this, and in turn, point to who they deem is the tip of the spear of these tactics. That's Electronic Arts. EA has been seen as the sort of pioneer of these practices for over a decade now, constantly pushing the envelope as to what they can monetize, and gaining such a reputation from it that its very logo on the front cover of the game is now seen as an hero man. Articles and posts calling them out from various subreddits. Countless development teams have been purchased, milked, and then shut down by them, and they've been voted most hated company in America twice in a row. The situation isn't good, but believe it or not, there was a time when EA wasn't universally despised. EA became what it is today gradually, and it all started in the mid-90s. It's the early 80s. Arcade gaming is big, the biggest it's ever been, and the PC market is beginning to grow as well. In 1982, ex-Apple employee William Hawkins decides he wants these and establishes a game publishing company software, then later changes the name to Electronic Arts. The founding philosophy of the company is simple: treat software like art and the developers like artists. In the early years, EA stick to that, even going as far as crediting the game designers and programmers on the front covers of their games. They make a nice return on investment over the next few years, funding talented developers who produce games like Wasteland. End of the However, some developers eventually start failing to meet deadlines. That and the end products begin to stray from what's agreed on, so EA then begins experimenting with its development. EA Sports is established in 1991, and they begin buying up exclusive licenses for their sports leagues. Stats from famous people on the front cover start pumping out yearly releases to very few changes. A few months later, Hawkins steps down as CEO, and instead sets his eyes on console. He goes on to create specifications for the most powerful console in game history. 3DO closes operations 12 years later. Hawkins also blows his commitment by the checks and tax issues. Anyway, another man takes the mantle, and he has a new history. It's now the mid-90s, and EA is still pumping out annual sports games, but they've also started buying up PC game developers. A lot. From 1992 to 1998, they purchased Westwood Studios, the minds behind the Commander series, Axis Studios, the people behind The Sims, and Bullfrog and Origin, two other talented developers at the time. Most of these studios are shut down by 2005. EA also signed a deal with the NFL for exclusive rights to player and team names, essentially filling off all current competition. This is when EA starts to get a bit of reputation, but this would be but a small taste. But before we get on to that, if you like privacy, because every second you spend online, yours is being taken. Your internet service provider sees everything you do, and then sells it on to advertisers. So, whenever you access public Wi-Fi, there's a chance your data is stolen by hackers. If it is, passwords, credit cards, and all those compromising photos are now on someone else's device. There are two options: continue being watched and risk being extorted by hackers, or NordVPN. NordVPN is essentially a first-class ticket to privacy. Forgive you on that. Click on a country. And you're gone. Complete internet freedom on up to 60 devices a month, and at the moment, NordVPN is just $3.49 a month, plus a month free. To get the deal, just hit the link in the description or use the code at checkout. It's now 2007, and EA has a new CEO appointed. The company also looks to be making somewhat of a turnaround with branding and produces multiple promising IPs, including Mass Effect and Dead Space. These weren't just being churned out year after year either. They also buy both BioWare and Pandemic being the developer behind Star Wars Battlefront. They were shut down 2 years later. It's now also a decade into EA's annual release of FIFA, and it's around this time that somebody has an extraordinary idea. A system where players create their very own team. People would acquire players for their team by opening randomized packs, using the credits they earned in the game. Ultimate Team first appeared in the spin-off to FIFA in 2007, but would later make its way into FIFA 9. But this time there was a twist. Making packs with your mum's credit card. The idea was revolutionary. Packs began to appear in games like Mass Effect and Battlefield, and eventually spread to other publishers' games. The pay-to-win was born. So it's 2013, and EA have a little problem. Not only are they now paying title budget, but bringing in billions of dollars a year, still managing to lose money. Something has to change. The CEO was immediately exiled. The man who would replace him is Andrew Wilson, former FIFA producer, also that man who did Ultimate Team a few years ago. Also, the CEO that replaces Hawkins in 1991 is made executive chairman. By this point, it's clear which direction the company is headed. And it works wonders for them. This is a graph of EA's profits before and after Wilson becomes CEO. EA also acquires the exclusive 10-year rights to make Star Wars games. Guys get to work on rebooting the Star Wars Battlefront series that EA has refused to try.
Introducing Froyo at Big Lots. Because sofas get jumped on, patio sets get dumped on, rugs get rolled on, and strolled on. So live on. Froyo, built for reality, priced for it too.
Trailers drop, and it's official. A new Star Wars game is coming, November the 17th, 2000. November finally comes around and commercially, the game does pretty well. When it comes to the action game, there are issues. The game was called Star Wars Battlefront, so people expected an experience similar to the first 2 games. This was not that. For starters, there wasn't a campaign, space battles were gone. There was just way less content than the last one, and that was a game that came out in 2005. On top of that, there was a DLC pass that was almost as much as the game itself. Okay, the game's not amazing, but it didn't matter. BioWare was coming back, and their next masterpiece, Mass Effect Andromeda, was just about. It's Finally, 2017, and BioWare, the masters of storytelling, are back. And you must play game. $40 million spent 5 years ago. It's going to be incredible.
And create something without, like, putting your own style out there, right? That's the skill.
The game was terrible. While the game's script was tight,
My face is tired.
the animations just weren't quite there. They later patched it to make her face less tired. There were also quite a few bugs. The faces were a bit off, voice acting wasn't great.
And you've gone down far.
Terrible AI, and the main character looked like she injected half a pound of heroin before every cut. Facial animations were so bad that BioWare spent 4 months patching it. The final product still left a lot to be desired. Besides the blinding technical issues, story and writing wasn't great, and the only thing holding it up was its all-round gameplay. It didn't get off BioWare to jump ship. Right, Andromeda's a write-off, but it's okay. EA have another shot with Star Wars Battlefront 2, coming out at the end of the year. Battlefront 2 was going to be the definitive Star Wars game. EA had promised to have learned their lessons from the first game, going above and beyond. This one, classes were back, a campaign, space battles, 3 generations. Best of all, was no season pass. It was finally the classic Battlefront experience. Launch day finally arrives, leading to players log in and start playing. EA executives gathered round, touching their chairs, sweating. Then something extraordinary happened. People found the game. They'd done it, delivered on their promises, made a game that people thoroughly enjoyed without major issues. Executives agreed to sign with it. Just as Andrew goes to take a beer from the fridge, something happens. Articles appear. Message boards light up. My God, it's ready. It turned out that after playing a few games, people started to realise something. Each player started playing Skywalker. Together, they were locked behind a 120,000 credit table. That sounded like a lot of credits, so someone on Reddit got equations. The match takes around 11 minutes, burn around 275 credits per match, 25 credits per minute. It's about 2,004 per unlocked. My God. Worked out that a total of 80 hours of gameplay was necessary to unlock the 2. Or you could just, they weren't the only things that lined up. The entire progression system was new. EA had essentially harvested the back system of FIFA into a Star Wars Battlefront game. Now at this point, 2 other shooters had also come in the box system. That was just one hit. They were 4 perspective. This meant the game was taking the win. People went crazy. It wasn't long, EA's PR team would have on Reddit. Sony took it twice further. By this point, people were extremely eager to report again. It was over. EA we announced the revamping of the progression system. Not done yet though. It turns out that it wasn't just gamers in the media that were ready, but governments around the too. Discussions started, politicians held meetings, and eventually the verdict cleared. Guilty. EA had enabled trial gambling on their online Star Wars video. UK undergoes thoughts about loot box regulation. American senators propose a bill that would regulate loot boxes. Belgium outright bans this. EA would later come out and say that loot boxes were fun. Just like great. Okay, Battlefront 2, also not too great, but it was alright. DICE had another shot at Battlefield 5, coming out late next year. Battlefield 1 was very well received. People were excited to see what DICE had in store a couple of years later. That was until the trailer dropped. The game seemed to take place in World War II, but something in the trailer caught people's eye. There was a woman. A woman with a massive alright.
Yeah, hold on. Go in.
Move your computer over. Okay, this is multi-layered.
Alright. This is one of the first time I've ever had iHobbit at home.
So, top layer, here's your pancake. This is the blueberry stuff that you can put on top. If you want, you can use syrup. Underneath is your egg, sausage, and hash brown.
I really like their sausages.
So, you can use the blueberry, you can use the syrup. You
Can I make
use both.
sausages like this at home?
No. I don't know how to make sausage. Plus, it's a pretty disgusting thing. Anyway, I've lightly salted this and this, so you'll want to blend that in. Okay?
So, I'm blending it with my,
Fork?
Mhm.
Anyway, enjoy.
Alright.
And then Kana, people were furious. Countless Reddit threads, tweets, comments questioning these design decisions appear instantly, and EA have to respond again. But this time, they weren't going to sit back and take it. EA's chief designer, Patrick Sutherland, steps out with the plan behind the back as uneducated. He also tells them that if it's such a big problem, just don't buy the game. Battlefield 5 sales were down by more than half. Sutherland would leave EA later that year. Aside from that, the game had many missing features. It was also not much of a step forward from Battlefield 1. Okay, that's one more shot at this. Anthem. Game BioWare has been working for 7 years. This time, it's BioWare's 18th shot. It's a whole new franchise, and crafters found out this is the one for us. Before we get into Anthem's reception, I think it's important we talk a little bit about it. In 2012, EA gave BioWare the go-ahead to create a new IP. They then gave them 7 years to produce a finished product. BioWare spends a lot of that time on pre-production. A lot of that time. Like 5.5 years. Pre-production basically consists of massive back and forths and meetings that ultimately resolve nothing and get the team nowhere. Time starts to pass, and eventually they realise they only have 16 months to actually develop the game. The game was released in February 2019, so that means that development was started around July 2017. Wait a minute, that's after they revealed the game. So all of this? Yeah, they didn't actually have a game at this point. We were finding out the game was going to be at the same time as the development. So 16 months to develop a AAA game. That's a heavy time crunch. On top of that, Anthem's being built from Frostbite, the same engine fueling DICE's games for the last decade. This is a powerful engine, but it's difficult to use. It's not really meant for the kind of game that BioWare are making. This means that they have to create a lot of systems to back up, which takes up a lot of development time. There were also things that just wouldn't work. For example, BioWare wanted massive creatures in the game, but Frostbite struggled to handle it. The idea was just scrapped. So a lot of the stuff they'd spent 5 years planning goes into the game. Okay, a lot of pressure now. And EA decided to start taking engineers from BioWare to help on the games. The developers start to realise that the game they wanted to make could not be created in the current time frame, so they cut back in scope. At the start of development, they wanted to have multiple cities. Couldn't do that. So they then went for a city and a player-created outpost. Couldn't do that. One city and a mobile ship? Nope. They ended up with a port. So, BioWare's management issued an official mandate to start. The game was to be unbeamable, unlike a certain other game. One avenue of invention was actual face animation, so they spent a lot more money on motion capture, really advanced motion capture, and they only had one shot at it, so at high cost. They ended up changing a few images later down, only to realise that they had no time or money to recapture them. This results in dialogue that doesn't really make sense. The team also doesn't really know what's working. They were barely able to actually playtest the game because BioWare had server problems that kept them on. They're essentially me. line. Now, the majority of this is actually the cult of BioWare's management, not EA. So even in the game's current condition, EA aren't going to budge on the release date. They string together all they possibly can in the short months left. On the 22nd of February, it turns out it's even worse than Andromeda. One of the biggest problems is on PS4. Playing Anthem sometimes causes its entire operating system to shut down. Then there's the loading screens. In some cases, they take longer than manageable missions. And as we've come to expect by now, the game is also very buggy. Besides that, the game also lacks content. It's a looter shooter, but the loot's a bit broken. The story's half-assed, and 2/3 of the endgame are recycled from previous levels. Some players also noticed that the game they received was a bit different to what EA advertised years ago. Once again, that's because development hadn't started enough. Nonetheless, the game goes on to be the US's fifth best-selling game in 2018. The main caveat was that the people who did buy it were not big fans. As a result, it lost a significant its player base in the first couple of months. BioWare is currently planning to rebuild the game from the ground up. But nonetheless, EA march on, unfolded by the massive hate they receive on a daily basis. It seems like never-ending to bankrupt every studio under them. Although EA has made a few reparations, and the hate train has died down as a result, it's only a matter of time. Doctor steps back on board, and those wheels start spinning again.
Hello. I just have a quick question. Do you guys have any copies of Jack?
Hey now, have you heard of Raid Shadowland? I know I sure have. It's nearly impossible watching so where it doesn't get shoved down my throat. As a matter of fact, you can find the book Aquarium. As here, it asked me to add read forward. And initially, I told them, yep, what a concept. But then they emailed me, actually, immediately kind of uncomfortable about it. I also didn't feel confident actively promoting. I just didn't know what it was about. Or, more importantly, that I wasn't passionate. But let me make one thing. I don't hold any as a sponsorship. Money is simply good to balance. No? Variable. Not for my whole life. Time for it. But to get back on topic, what do you think for you? I don't know. What, have you been living under a rock? It's the mobile phenomenon that's been in the world by storm. But you don't gotta take my word for it. Take it away, boys.
This episode is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is a brand new free-to-play mobile RPG game. Amazing storyline, extremely immersive, vicious, character, console titles.
Raid Shadow Kasi, third-based game with over 400 champions, the NAM and Coast Guard.
And apparently, crossplay so you can play on your mobile phone or on your computer.
So what are you waiting for? Go to that description box, click that link, and redeem your 50,000 in silver and epic champion.
Yeah, I don't have any. There's some pretty good ones out there. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna just get it because like waiting here at the bus stop, trips to the bathroom, or waiting for your turn at the dentist's office, much more tolerable. That's the mobile. You can play them even in the middle of a smash mouth. Like a band that is not fresh, but has. You know what? I believe these guys. They started performing
I just couldn't help but get up and eat. So, he's Raid Shadow Legend, shooting star that breaks the shape of an L. Now, before we begin, let me make one thing clear. I'm not making the other cash on for the whale. No, despite the fact that I myself like hardcore, I actually think they're right up my alley. I have an addictive personality, so naturally I was hooked. And honestly, I would lose it. To the point where I would look up from my phone only to suddenly realize that 3 hours had passed, which meant that the Burger King was about to close. Oh no! So one of the first things this game has to do is select your character. I did have a little bit of trouble here though, since Smash Mouth has awful Wi-Fi, but once you pick your character, you're fed to the rules and you round under. And at first, I like this game so much to do, so much to do. But after playing it for a little while, I realized that it's actually gameplay where it is on you. Pretty much every time I went back to the game up, the game back up, I was greeted with buy up. They really want you to buy these back. Most of them were on the buy as well. So don't delay. Act now. Supplies are running out. And of course, these purchases give you significant advantage. Strike one, Shadow. Right? So I have never purchased action. Well, at least not with my own. I give it a little worse. I had $10 ready to go. So I went ahead and purchased a $10 pack to speed up my progress and continue with. So, when you're not trying to spend a lot of your time, which is perfect. And at first it's pretty standard stuff. Have a action. Bad guys have a perfect health. So you prioritize. Cool. There are boss fights. Bosses. They only serve you. There is also a series of red, blue, green, red, and purple next side. Champions have one color sign, seemingly random, but I was actually with the external part because I upgraded my purpose to level 2. I did this pretty early on, but they had some over. Thanks to that, I could offer after. There is also a dungeon, which allows me to fight with 5 enemies, or also got me. Now maybe I'm not sure, but I was under the impression that other but instead like AI, some other players. So after about 45 minutes, I was over the entire point where I just got so sick of watching pain land unskippable over and over. Thank God they spin a button that allows you to double the beats. I don't know what to tell you. The combat is so simplistic. There's literally an automatic button, which when you hit it, just essentially and that's strikes. As you're skating, it's pretty thin, Shadow. And after an hour or so, I had to take a break from it. Since I could Some of you might be wondering, This right here is Susan. Longtime fans will remember Susan as the sort of mother goose of my channel. She's just some old lady from Fiverr.com who lent her voice to several of my projects over the years. But, fortunately, in October of... she passed away.
I don't think I can take it anymore. It's time for me to move on. Let bygones be bygones. Put my old chattering bones to rest and find some peace and tranquility. But for God's sake, don't let them cremate me. Make sure they don't put my body in the blast furnace.
So, since Susan had no friends or family and I was her only customer, they sent her ashes. And I've just been back in the brain. I have no idea where the hell I spread them. Well, I barely knew her, but the last thing I want to do is be respectful. Poor thing hasn't. But if she's anything like every other woman, she probably loves him. So, what are the sorry. So, in turn-based combat, you can upgrade your artifact to silver. But the thing about that is, once you get an artifact up to a certain level, it becomes increasingly more difficult to level it up again. Actually, kind of easier. I'll show you. Okay, so we got this axe at level 13. Let's get it up to 14. Oh, no. Gosh, me. Oh, yeah. But again, come on. This is the way. No, you do this over and over again. 15,000 silver a pop. And next thing you know, that's 1,000 silver you got from clicking on pyrocynical link is gone. Just like that. It's literally different from gambling. So this is the last $5 that my Nana gave me before she died. Have a mission. Baby, come on. Oh man, we were close. Almost. Come on, baby, I feel this. It's good. What? I spin. Man, I didn't get anything. Hits started coming and they wouldn't stop coming. When you're not upgrading artifacts, you're mostly just champions by equipping them as weapons and armor, upgrading their skills, and increasing their stats so that their brain gets smart. Pretty standard art stuff. You know what I think is pretty egregious though? If you want to remove artifacts from a champion without destroying them, you have to pay thousands of silver for it. How awful is that? That's straight free for Shadow Legends right there. Could you imagine if they did that in something like the Division? They charge you in-game currency to duplicate items off of your character? There would be a riot. And that's pretty much all there is to raid Shadow Legends. Honestly, I don't know what I would do. I know that it's just a mobile, but after a year of seeing countless ads for it, I figured it had to be something special because they're clearly making enough money from countless content, pools of cash to grow it. That really sets it apart from other mobile games. The fact that it has a fully voice acting, and the voice acting is, it's fast. But the lady at Starbucks didn't seem all that impressed by it.
At last, they arrived at Marbach, the temple was now consecrated to the cult of Sir. Arriving at the snow-clad moor that sloped down to Fountain's Gate, the company surveyed the grim scene. Many peoples of Teleria camped in the frozen mud beside the monuments of the Great Gate down. Red-haired skinwalker guards were denying them entry.
I figured that at the very least, Shadow Legends would have, but it is. That is garbage. I didn't find anything about the feedback loop fun or addicting. To start up a mission, rewards from that mission for better artifacts, keep playing to upgrade those artifacts, and you can roll that for what? Also that you can watch your champion. Uh-oh, I ran out of lightning bolts. Looks like I can't play for another few hours until they start. But you know what? I'm okay with it, because Raid Shadow Legends literally is nothing important. And that doesn't seem right. So I was more invested in nothing more than watching Katamari pull on the screen and acting. I played Ball Blast for 2 weeks straight. This seems terrible. But somehow I was into it. Hell, I even played with Ryan Reynolds' Toon Blast for about a month. I wanted to pass up my cat, so I put in enough time to pass up my cat. And that's honestly the first match game I've ever played. I could stomach all of that, yet I didn't want to play Shadow Legends after just a couple. It doesn't help that everything about Raid is designed to nudge you. Ran out of lightning bolts, but still want to keep playing, but you gotta buy more. You don't want to grind out 50 victories for just one out of, I don't know, hundreds of upgrades to your champ. That's fine. Just buy a pack that gives you all the necessary items. Ran out of silver because you're trying to level up an artifact? Well, then you buy some silver. The game is built around this massive grind. Yet it wants you to circumvent that grind by giving them money. I think this game's monetization is honestly pretty gross. And the fact that it's one of today's playable I think we can all use a little change. Well, there's really not much else to say about Rage, and just a little mobile game. There's not much to it. But I figured that this thing here would finish any spread season. I think she'll finally get this. But for our final goodbye season, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for all that you've done. You will be. Goodbye, Susan.
Hey now, have a legend, get it for free. Go play. Hey now, you're a big shill, Bridget sponsor. Thought, hey, running like your toe for 6,000 dollars, but no go. Buy a car from anywhere, everywhere becomes a contest. You're more than person. CarMax is still a CarMax offering website pickup and a 7-day money back. Unbeatable prices on the season's best brakes. Summer's on.
This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Gaming is massive. Every day, billions boot up their PCs, consoles. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. They're everywhere. Thousands of engineers day to day, completely for free by people that sweat and tears into their work. And the results? Absolutely incredible. The process of making them is simple. Grab an expressive or well-known image, import it to Photoshop, then recontextualize it by adding relatable or accurate captions. Alternatively, just deep fry the living shit out of it. Then upload it to a platform of your choice. And if it's popular enough, it might be taken by others, recaptioned, then re-uploaded to other platforms in a cycle that lasts for weeks, till the meme has been exhausted of all of its humour, and finally, laid to rest. The last few years have seen memes explode in reach. It's even got to the point where politicians and political parties are posting them. Memes have become massive, but they aren't anything new. In fact, they've actually been around since the mid-90s. They have changed forms pretty considerably though. It's the year 2000. The Y2K bug has not caused the untold devastation some have predicted. Other people are optimistic. The internet has been publicly available for 9 years now, and it's still in its very early stages. Sites like YouTube and Facebook are still another 4 years away. But by this point, memes had already started. For an idea of some of the internet's first memes, one was a gif of a dancing baby, another a line from a poorly translated arcade game.
All your things are belong to us. Don't ask what it is.
Social media was incredibly bare bones at the time, so if you wanted to share one of these bad boys, it was either through bulletin boards, direct messaging, or good old email. When it came to text-based memes, the late 90s introduced the motivational posters that subverted the common motivational posters for comedic effect. Then in 2005, someone on 4chan decided to put text over pictures of cats, and the people loved it. This text format was then adopted to other images. If you're older than 13, you've probably seen at least one of these. Memes have since evolved over the years. At this point, they're almost universally known. For good or for bad.
Here's my special what's up. I pickle red.
But it wasn't just pictures of cats with text on and baby gifts that went viral. Actual people did too. If you befell this fate, you'd be launched to stardom in a matter of days. Some people lavished this newfound celebrity status, living the life of a rock star, possibly even effect. But becoming a meme was not such a great experience for everyone. Lies, lawsuits, hit pieces, just overall embarrassment seep through the cracks of the glory and would plague those unfortunate souls for years on end. These are their stories. In 2002, a time characterised by an overwhelming amount of Nokia bricks, the Harry Potter films, and a freshly elected Bush administration. More importantly, the Star Wars prequels. Enter Ghislaine Raza. Ghislaine was just a regular 14-year-old attending high school in Troy Riviere, Canada. However, very soon it would come to be known worldwide as a Jedi Knight. On November the 4th, Ghislaine was in the studio room of his high school, fielding nothing but a golf ball retriever. Recorded himself pretending to be a Jedi. That recording was never supposed to be approved, but Ghislaine made a fatal mistake. The incriminating tape was left in the basement of the school, and in April 2003, 2 other students discovered the footage. One of them turned the tape into video and distributed it around the school. Soon, everyone in the school had seen it. It didn't take long for it to spread around the internet. Needless to say, it blows up the chart. It's estimated that, by November of 2006, the clip had been viewed around 1 billion times. Once again, the video was going round at a time before YouTube. This was the most viewed video on the internet by far at this point. Naturally, it was dubbed Star Wars Kid. And then came the edits. Star Wars Kid in a canoe. Star Wars Kid in the Matrix. Star Wars Kid in Star Wars. It was featured and alluded to in countless television shows. Ghislaine said that almost every talk show in North America asked him to come on. He declined all of them. A petition was even made to include him in the next Star Wars film. The petition reached 150,000 signatures, but unfortunately, he was not offered the cameo. What seemed to be nothing more than a funny joke turned out to be a bit more sinister than what he denied. After the video went around the school, Gislaine's classmates would apparently jump on tables in front of other students and proceed to tell insults. When it hit the web, things got a lot worse. Random people were sending him messages. They were not nice. He lost friends at school, and it got so bad that he actually had to leave the school, substituting it with private tutoring. He also had to see a therapist. He went through such an ordeal that, for years after the event, he would do his best to distance himself from the identity of the Star Wars Kid. But there was a problem. People kept recognizing him. Eventually, he ended up just giving up and coming out. In 2003, he sued the families of the children who put the video on the internet for around $250,000. They reached an undisclosed settlement 3 years later, but the money he received ended up not even covering the costs of therapy and private tutoring. We haven't heard much since. Quickly before we move on, you know that browsing the internet is dangerous. Here are the facts. There is a man at the NSA at this very moment watching your every move. So don't skip this ad. You might be interested in your VPN too. Fact number 2. Internet service providers like Verizon and BT track your internet use and then sell it on to advertisers. And fact number 3. Hackers can exploit unsecure connections to get inside your system, and from there, they can steal your precious data. What can you do about these severe privacy risks? Well, luckily, the boys over at Nord have whipped up a military-grade encryption VPN. With NordVPN, your IP address is hidden. This means internet service providers and hackers can't track what you do, and that NSA man now has to work even harder to find you. To them, you could be anyone. All of this and more on super fast servers, and there's 5,500 of them. Only 600. 2 times the encryption. Use of up to 6 devices at once. It even works in China. But wait, you're having a problem with your VPN? Just 24 hours before. For some reason it's not with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And NordVPN is 70% off using the link below. That's $3.49 a month. Plus a month free. Just go to nordvpn.com/bigboss or use the code BIGBOSS at checkout. April 2005. World of Warcraft is massive. The game just reached an estimated 1.5 million monthly subscribers just 5 months after release. And in this segment, 24-year-old Ben Schultz and his friends record a video that goes down in the history books. A rough go first appears on the World of Warcraft video hosting site called Warcraft Movies. The video starts with Ben's in-game character, Leroy Jenkins, standing at the gates of a raid with a group of friends, while they carefully plan the odds of survival. But there's a twist. Ben has chugged 2 pints of G Fuel beforehand. It quickly becomes the most downloaded video on the site. People flock to Warcraft Movies just to witness it. The following week see the forums flooded with Leroy Jenkins comments. In August 2006, the video goes up on YouTube, and Leroy Jenkins goes mainstream.
We've all had an idea to create something amazing. A $5 domain is all it takes. What are you waiting for? Let's start.
People talk a lot about how hard Japanese is. They say that its grammar is complicated, that its logic system is crazy. While we're not going to argue that learning Japanese doesn't require effort, we do think that it's pretty straightforward. Native speakers of Japanese learn the language the same way that every being has ever learned any language ever, by getting exposure to it that is A, extensive, B, level appropriate, and C, consistent. Native Shark is an education platform that gives students exactly this type of exposure. Native Shark's content is divided into 4 phases. We start with the basics, a framework, thinking about Japanese, and gradually build up to the point where you understand everything that a native speaker should. As you progress through these phases, content does become more advanced, in a sense, but even our beginner lessons contain language used in the same way that native speakers use it. There are subtleties and nuance packed into even the simplest of speech. The sound or intonation of a word, the way a sentence is phrased, the situation in which it will be natural to use. We don't just teach you what to say, we teach you how to say it, and when. Why is it that so many people live in Japan for decades but still don't know Japanese? One reason is that the exposure to the language that they do get is too advanced for them, so it all goes over their heads. But when you only get exposed to language that just slightly pushes the boundaries of your skill and knowledge level, it's easier to remember. Japanese consists of many segments. Sounds and characters make words, words make sentences, and sentences communicate ideas. With Native Shark, when you learn a new sound or character, it's the only new piece of information. When you see that new word in a sentence, it's the only new word in that sentence. As a result, no Japanese goes over your head, which means no time is wasted. Since we've organized this content carefully, your knowledge builds to a higher level faster. Finally, we help you to keep improving every day. Learning a language is a lot like pushing a large boulder up a very big hill. If you let go of it, you'll roll back down. You'll lose your progress. To make matters worse, the boulder gets heavier every time you study the wrong thing, time, going the wrong way. We can't make you push the boulder up the hill every day, but we can make it easy for you to see the effort that you need to put in. Our platform's intricate path to fluency adapts to your study habits. We have advanced statistics and tracking to help measure your progress. And to make it even easier, we have a big button that just says Study Now. It can help you get you on your way every time you log in. Like I said, we can't make you show up to push the ball. But if you do, let us know how fast you want to reach the top, and we'll lay the path to get there. If you want to learn Japanese, don't let anyone tell you that you can't. There is a way. One of them is called Native Shop, and we'd love to learn. Whether you're a beginner, an expert, or somewhere in between, stop by our community and ask any one of our thousands of students how Native Shop works for them. Or jump straight into our platform and start learning today.
It becomes such a staple in the fan base of World of Warcraft that the developers actually try to embrace it. Leroy Jenkins becoming a trading card in a few of their games, and a character in a World of Warcraft expansion. Ben was also invited to their annual conventions, where he would ascend on stage and shout Leroy Jenkins as loud as he could into the audience. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. An insane amount of people had seen the video. This meant Leroy had fans. A lot of them. This made playing the game a bit more difficult than it used to be, as wherever Ben would go, an army of fans would be marching behind him, uttering those famous words. This went on for months. Apparently on one occasion, actual enraged mother logged on and shouted at Ben because her son wouldn't stop shouting Leroy Jenkins. In another instance, he had an actual online stalker named Leroy's Apprentice. Leroy's Apprentice would apparently follow him around the game religiously and wanted to hang out with him all the time. But it wasn't just the fans, as it turned out that some people actually weren't too happy about the viral video. So Ben got his fair share of hate as well. Shortly after the video blew up, Ben and the boys tried to cash in on the insane spread of Leroy Jenkins, so they made some merchandise. Fortunately, clothing couldn't compete with the sea of Jenkins merchandise already on the market, though they did manage to sell a thong with Ben's face on it. They also had no way of trademarking Leroy Jenkins because it wasn't associated with the product or service, and the game developers owned the rights to the original video and everything in it. They gave up on this business venture not long after. Ben then took up some voice lessons, and was soon offered a few announcement gigs at some video game tournaments, but that didn't last too long either. It looked like Ben was out of luck when it came to making much money from the video. Then rumours of the Leroy Jenkins character in the Warcraft movie popped up. Apparently Legendary Pictures flew him out to Hollywood to meet some of their staff, but it would turn out that this character was in an early version of the script and was quickly scrapped. At least he was invited to the premiere. Ben asked the people at Legendary Pictures that he be included in the film. The director has since stated that there would be no sequel. June 2004, a German boy by the name of Norman Kopnowski celebrates his 13th birthday. He receives an expensive camcorder. He used this camcorder to become one of the very first ship hosts on the internet. A bit of context. Before any of this, Norman frequented a mixtape website run by a rapper whom he admired. One line from one of the rapper's mixtapes goes, "I'm a real gangster. I drive a car without a We thought he'd parody this line. In 2005, he shot and uploaded a video that would come to be known as I'm a Real Gangster.
I'm a real gangster. I'm stealing in the bread shop.
This video ends up getting shared around online. Norman then goes on to create a fictional alter ego around the video called Leopold Slick, and would continue to upload gangster videos online under this persona. These videos would range from exploding Coca-Cola on his face to singing invitations. Eventually, in 2006, he makes a video called PC Spielen, and everything changes. Now, 2006 was a time, not too unlike today, where the media was intent on turning to video games to answer why children would turn violent. Media in Germany was pushing this narrative strongly at the time, and a few German politicians were actively discussing it. One even called an outright ban on it. So keeping that in mind, Norman uploads PC Spielen, a video where he pretends to play Unreal to get a bit angry. The video gets around online. Eventually, Norman is approached by German group TV, who ask if they can use the clip for a documentary. He agrees. They were then given the rights to PC Spieler, subsequently shot a documentary, Leopold. This is when things started to turn sour. The documentary ended up making Norman out to be some sort of deranged kid that violent video games negatively affected. Went to the lengths of making a big fake backstory for the video, suggesting that the father had set up a hidden camera to get footage of his ADHD son playing a video. That was just a shameless lie. But then the documentary started to gain some traction. As a result, PC Spiel went viral, spawning dozens of edits and Norman's worldwide recognition of the angry German kid. He was famous. There was just one problem. Everyone absolutely hated him. Now, 2006 was also a time when YouTube was more of an authentic place than it is today. A time where most of the videos were breakdown, DIY, and otherwise educationally oriented. In other words, Norman was very ahead of his time. People thought the videos were real. They thought he was really weird. Thousands of hate comments appeared on uploads to PC Spieler. He also started to get bullied in school. Tried writing an online post explaining that the videos were staged, but no one was listening. He would end up pulling the original gangster videos, but it was too late. Dozens of re-uploads were already around. It was out of Norman's hands. He announced that no more videos would be released because the situation disappeared from the internet without a trace. There would be no more real gangster. Though 6 years later, he would come back to YouTube as a bodybuilder rapper. Buck Parade, Berlin, July 2000. An experimental video artist by the name of Matthias Fritsch records a 4-minute clip, absolutely stacked Nordic looking man dancing down the street to techno music. Matthias uploads it to his website, and not much happens for about 6 years. But then in 2006, he uploads it to YouTube, and in 2007, it goes viral. The techno Viking becomes world famous, and Matthias earns around $10,000 through YouTube ads and licensing over the first 2 years of it going viral. But 2 years later, a letter would arrive on Matthias' doorstep. Viking. He wasn't happy. It turned out to be a letter from the techno Viking's lawyer, and upon opening it, Matthias saw that the anonymous Viking was demanding the internet and never use it for commercial purposes again. This demand didn't make too much sense, as there were dozens of re-uploads already floating around online, but it would be a $250,000 fine if he failed to comply. Not only take down the videos, but the Viking demanded €30,000 for damages. That and the €10,000 in legal fees added up to €23,000 that Matthias had to pay, rendering him bankrupt. German courts ultimately ruled that everyone else in the world was free to upload the video, besides Matthias. Matthias could never touch the video again. The techno Viking was not a big fan of the video. It apparently took him 2 years to even find out about it. When he did, he was not happy. This was partly because the man was on copious amounts of speed at the time of recording. Trying to stay off the radar for the following years after the video, his identity was never actually uncovered, though rumours popped up here and there. He's only revealed his actual identity in the last few years. What little information we now know of the man is that his first name is Gunther. That's about it. The rest is still a mystery. So, the Techno Viking is now a Fortnite dancer. May 27, 1999. A young gorilla was born at Gladys Porter Zoo, Texas. His name is Harambe. 2014, transferred to Cincinnati Zoo. Unfortunately, Harambe would meet his end here just 2 years later. May 28, 2016, Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. Time hits 4 o'clock and a 3-year-old begins his journey into a gorilla enclosure, climbing a 3-foot fence, falling through 4 feet of bushes, then falling 15 feet into the shallow water of the pit. Things go south from there. Upon realising that a child was in the pit, zookeepers signal to the 3 gorillas in the enclosure to return inside. 2 of the gorillas follow orders. The 3rd gorilla goes rogue. This gorilla is Harambe. Instead, he climbs down into the shallow waters to investigate the splashes. Now at this point, the crowd is screaming at the sight of a 400-pound gorilla nearing a child. Harambe can't take the pressure, gets agitated and defensive. He stands over the child, or dragging him through the shallow water. This is not an ideal situation for anyone. and the clock is ticking. There are two main options. Option 1, they could tranquilize Harambe, but this comes with a few problems. Tranquilization can take a few to kick in, and his unconscious body could fall on it. Option 2 involves a hunting rifle. Eventually, the head zookeeper makes the executive decision: eliminate the game. They took the shot, and tragically, Harambe was no more. This sparked RIP Harambe protests outside of the zoo for a few days, and for weeks after the ape's demise, commemorative displays were being parodied online. People targeted some of the memes at Cincinnati Zoo's social media accounts, so many people in fact, that the Cincinnati Zoo was actually begging people to stop. People didn't stop. Cincinnati Zoo had no choice. They had to go offline. Petitions popped up on change.org demanding justice for Harambe, one even reaching 500,000 signatures. The hashtag Digs Out for Harambe went viral. A Harambe statue was erected, people got tattoos of Harambe, apparently people voted for Harambe. He was everywhere. And naturally, this brought a lot of attention to the head zookeeper and the parents of the child, and they started to have some problems. First off was the head zookeeper. It was his Twitter. It kept getting hacked. Since deleted tweets read, "I was planning this for a while. So sorry it took so long, brother. Have a good time in heaven. Hashtag Harambe." And Harambe 1, Cincinnati Zoo 0. The head zookeeper retrieved his account and deleted the tweets. Then came another tweet, simply hashtag Digs Out for Harambe. The zookeeper re-retrieved his account and deleted the tweet. The parents of the child also had problems. Hordes of people attacked the mother over Facebook and Twitter for not keeping an eye on her child, and that petition I mentioned earlier, it was made to incite an investigation into whether the parents were fit enough to raise their 4 kids. The mother made the backlash even worse by posting a lengthy statement on Facebook, thanking God, and not really showing any sympathy for Rilla. She got so much hate that she ended up deleting her Facebook account. And so, cautionary tales of internet fame gone wrong come to a close. But one thing is certain. Becoming a meme is a dance with death. It can shoot you to the stars, shower you with money, even, fortunately for us, launch a rap career. But bankruptcy, lawsuits, and God forbid, even being unable to play World of Warcraft is never off the table. Onto minority yet. For lots of people, the stock market can be a lucrative endeavour in which they earn interest on a portion of their savings each year. Just set aside a couple of grand, and if you've done your research, after a few years, watch it multiply. Or get delisted and turn it to dust. But for some, years are far too long to wait. Traders want their money paid and throw thousands of dollars into stocks, forex, and options to get it. On one side, you've got the retail traders, usually trading on the side of their main job. These guys are normally pretty sensible, clued up, and use a detailed series of charts and strategies to predict where stocks are headed. Then you've got the professionals, the institutional traders and bankers who have spent years studying markets and have access to Bloomberg terminals, pools of monitors, and millions of dollars. They spend hours charting, like full essays of due diligence before even thinking of going in. Cunning, careful, calculated. Then there are the other traders.
Microsoft ticker on a popular subreddit that's dedicated to markets. It was discovered on Reddit using a similar to a sort of video game hack. Put down a little bit of a deposit on margin, and then you get infinite leverage.
Getting people to take more risk than they want to. That's what these kids are doing, and they're psychopaths.
Wall Street Bets, an online message board so pungent with autism, its members make the raid man look like James Bond. By turning stock options from a hedging strategy into a glorified bet trade, people on the subreddit manage to convert the entire stock market to their very own personal casino. Add that to zero commission brokerage apps available to everyone with a mobile phone, lock everyone in their house for months on end, and you've got an ungodly amount of board. Process is simple. You Start your career by signing up to Robinhood, a zero-commission online brokerage infamous for being absolutely terrible and breaking constantly. Oh, lost $20,000 because of a problem on our end. Here's $75 compensation. Despite its problems, it's still far better than frustrating. Robinhood's the bottom of the barrel of brokers, and as such, usually attracts likewise traders. But it just about works. Once you've signed up, it's usually best to read up on trading terms so you have a shred of an idea of what you're doing. But this stage is completely optional. Once you're on Robinhood, you're set. It's time to lose money. This usually starts by logging into Wall Street Bets. The subreddit itself is home to a few things: bull posts, bear posts, gains, losses, but mainly, it's a bunch of shit posts and memes. Useful stock tips and actual thorough due diligence can occasionally be found, however. Once located, and after skim reading a few lines of it and glancing at some charts you pretended to understand, it's time to go all in. The YOLO, the subreddit's signature move. Essentially, an investment of all of the cash in your account. Once the cash is on hand, it's time to suit up. The weapon of choice almost always being options on SPY, a fund that tracks the overall US market. What are stock options? Basically, an option to buy or sell a stock at a specified price. When you're buying a call option, you're basically paying a premium upfront to bet that the value of the stock will rise to a certain price by a certain date. The further the price goes beyond your selected strike price, the more your call's worth. But if it doesn't hit your strike price by the expiry date, you're not paying this month's rent. Puts are the same thing, but they're generally for when you think stocks are going to fall. If an option hits your strike price or more, you can exercise them to buy or sell the shares, or sell the options on at any time before the expiry. Now, the nature of options allows for a huge potential and upside, banking numerous people up to 10 times their investment, but also losing others all of it. There have been a few tragic losses, but even for those that lose everything on Wall Street Bets, there's almost always another portion of Grandma's pension up for grabs to head straight back in. It's 2012, and after being exiled from r/investing for constantly pumping risky trading ideas, Reddit user u/jartech decides to make a subreddit of his own, and on January 31st, Wall Street Bets goes live. It's not long before the subreddit adopts a 4chan-like etiquette of calling each other retards and autists, and casual mentions of cuckoldry everywhere. It's also not long before people on the subreddit start playing around with options and penny stocks. The trade starts out pretty tame, but this doesn't last for long. It's also worth mentioning that everyone on the subreddit was relatively competent with stocks and had some idea of what they were doing. Until 2015, around the time when Robinhood starts to gain some traction. From there, it's not long before they find Wall Street Bets. The subreddit hits 10,000 members, and the slow influx of Robinhood traders begins. Naturally, quality of posts on the subreddit take a hit. In late 2016, this influx only accelerates as Wall Street Bets starts to leak onto r/bull, growing this up to around 50k by mid-year. By this point, many of the original members have had enough and left the subreddit for good. Numerous events unfold over the next few years, with users like Wall Street Bets start appearing, claiming to have made $8 million from 43,000. Someone makes $110,000 completely by accident. Martin Shkreli becomes a mod. By 2019, the sub had grown to 700,000 members, and the autism was cranked up to 100. It's mid-January 2019. Reddit user IronMan decides to stray from the subreddit's proven strategies.
We've all had an idea to create something amazing. A $5 domain is all it takes. What are you waiting for? Yes.
By 2019, the sub had grown to 700,000 members, and the autism was cranked up to 100. It's mid-January 2019. Reddit user IronMan decides to stray from the subreddit's proven strategies. He's still trading options. This wasn't your usual options trade. This was a box spread, highly complicated strategy that involved both buying and selling equal amounts of options at the same expiry and strike price, and profiting by taking advantage of pricing inefficiencies. Box spreads are generally not very profitable, and the commission charges slapped on top of them usually make them not even worth bothering with. But Irony Man was on Robin Hood. Robin Hood doesn't have commission charges. Bingo. Time to go in. Now Irony Man only has $5,000 in his account, but by trading these box spreads, he manages to take on around $300,000 worth of margin. That's a leverage of 60 to 1. Now obviously, this should not be possible, but Irony Man's strategy was so autistic that not even Robin Hood's risk management could be done. He'd also worked out that the box spreads were completely risk-free, meaning he had no money at risk. If those options remained unexercised, in 2 years, he'd make around $40,000. He goes on Wall Street bets and shows everyone the results. Immediately realising the inherent risk, people tell him not to go through with it, that there was risk involved, that he was completely retarded. But Irony Man had run maths. He had no money at risk. It literally could not go tits up. Until people started exercising them. See, Irony Man thought that for every call he sold being exercised, he could exercise a call he purchased, meaning a loss of only $500 per spread. But here's the thing, he sold 500 spreads. On the same day he opened the spreads, buyers began exercising them. So many, in fact, that Irony Man had to close 283 spreads in one day. Naturally, his margin calls for a shit ton of money he doesn't even have. $60,000 down and minus 2,000% later, Robin Hood actually realised what was going on and closed Irony Man's account instantly. Box spreads were removed from the platform in a matter of hours. So overall, not a great week for Irony Man. But it turned out that before things went tits up, Irony Man withdrew $10,000 of the initial profit in his Robin Hood account, meaning that while losing Robin Hood at least $60,000 and changing a major investment platform's rules forever, Irony Man had actually doubled his money. Before we go on, browsing. It's important. We do it pretty much every day. What if people see what we browse, down to every last detail? Well, your internet service provider can, as well as any hacker sharing an unsecured internet connection with your device. All your precious info gone instantly. Enter NordVPN. NordVPN encrypts your data at the source, meaning those spying eyes don't have a chance. It's simple. They give you a map, you pick a country, and you're off the grid instantly. Australia, Italy, Mexico. Your internet could be anywhere. You don't know? How will then? Unlimited bandwidth, super fast service. It even works on 600 devices at once. And NordVPN is 68% off using the link in the description. That's $3.71 a month. That's a month free. "19-year-old student Emil Barmatu starts out with Wall Street bets in 2018. His first post suggests he's new to trading, asking when he should go with those 5K, how not to be so retarded, and so on. Fast forward to July 2019, and he's a grizzled veteran. He's now got around $100,000 in his Robin Hood account. He goes all in with it at short-term expiry calls on the company technologies. It goes well. A day later, he banks $200,000 profit. 2 days later, it heads back in. The market had gone up yesterday, so logically, tomorrow it was going to drop. He then YOLOs 170k on 0-day expiry spy puts. These puts expire the next day, so naturally, they're high risk, high reward. The same day he buys them, a rogue tweet from Donald Trump announcing a new wave of Chinese tariffs causes the market to nosedive. He bags another 300k, making his account worth almost $700,000. Confident a market rally was on the cards for the day after, Anal Farmer 2 then put 600k of just made into another round of 0-day expiry options for tomorrow, but this time they're refused. He goes to bed. But when he wakes up, it's a hellscape. A sea of red. The market was down hard again, and his $600,000 was snapped out of existence instantly. He sold the calls on for 100k, leaving around 200k in his account. He could make that 500 back if you can. Fast forward a week, it's down to $40,000. An investment approach was tempting, but Anal Farmer 2 wasn't done just yet. Alright, one final YOLO. Just need to find the right stock, Spotted August 14th earnings report for Pinnacle Growth Corp and decides to put the entirety of his account for it. He goes to bed. August 13th, one day before earnings. Anal Farmer 2 is currently up 8K. Isn't looking good. He goes to bed again. Wakes up the next day again to a sea of red. Earnings was a complete disaster. However, Anal Farmer 2 is not selling for a loss. Plans on sticking with the course to the end. It's generally assumed that he lost the rest of his account that week. Having made and lost $7,000 in 3 weeks, Anal Farmer 2 decides to take a break from street bets. Hasn't been back much since. A couple of months later, and the guy who controlled the narrative goes in. Trades off the back, borrows money via leverage through Robinhood, and loses $30,000 on options for Microsoft's earnings report. He makes a Reddit post declaring the end of his trading career, and that was the end of it. Until he came back 3 days later. This time, he's only got $2,000, but there's a twist. Turns out there's a glitch on Robinhood, and it gives you leverage. Multiple others use this glitch to borrow money in millions, but control the narrative is sensible. He only borrows enough to meet his personal risk tolerance. $50,000. Loophole work by applying for 2-to-1 leverage via Robinhood Gold, a monthly subscription service which requires a minimum of $2,000 in your account. Object. Because he has 2-to-1 leverage, he now has $4,000 buying power. Control the narrative then buys 100 shares of AMD stock. He pays $3,200 for the shares, with almost half of that being leveraged. He then goes to Robinhood's option market and sells AMD calls, turning over his 100 shares, receiving a premium of $3,200. He'd essentially laundered the leverage Robinhood had access to into a tangible cash balance in his account. And since he has Robinhood Gold and his leverage is 2-to-1, he now has access to $8,000. Rinse and repeat until he hits $50,000, his personal risk tolerance. He then bets every single penny of that on Apple puts days before an earnings report, expecting bad news. Earnings day finally arrives, and Tim Apple smiles as he uploads Apple's quarterly financials. Christ, they've smashed it. Control the narrative loses 25 times his entire account in minutes, prompting his soul to leave his body live on camera. It wasn't long before the leverage loophole was fixed. Robinhood would then go on to Wall Street Bets and clarify their policies and margin to state that anyone found abusing systems on Robinhood would have their account closed. They were banned from the subreddit instantly. But while Wall Street Bets was busy spreading the ashes of control the narrative, a few bears had spotted something brewing and rising. February 2020. The Dow Jones Index is riding at an all-time high, and Wall Street Bets now has almost 900,000 members. At the same time, things were happening in China. They weren't good. A new coronavirus was springing up all over Wuhan, and it was spreading fast. China locked down the city, told everyone that everything was just fine. Turns out, it wasn't. Fast forward a few months, and almost the entire world has it, and it's still spreading.
You make more. Wow.
After infections start springing up in Europe and America, governments cave in one by one. Alright boys, time to close shop. Bears on Wall Street Bets had struck it big. While infections continued to spread, bears were rubbing their hands together. These puts were going to print nicely. And they did. March, the US market fell by almost 30%. But the lockdown was expected to cripple the economy for years. Bears were certain the worst was yet to come, so the mission was simple. Load back up the goods and head straight back in. COVID was getting worse, rent wasn't being paid, and unemployment numbers were skyrocketing. Once again, they literally did not go to its up. They hadn't taken into account one thing, however. A booming market was Trump's golden ticket to a re-election in 2020. He wasn't just going to let it slip into the gutter. And so began the pump. The head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, was tasked with the stock market afloat, a feat that seemed almost impossible under the current circumstances. But then something incredible. By pressing a simple button, Jerome Powell discovered something fascinating. Real-life money glitch. one that was yet to be patched. Turned out that the Fed has a money printer, and it printed money. The recession was cancelled instantly. In late February, the US government pledged $2.5 billion to fight the coronavirus, but by mid-April, it burned through more than $6 trillion. The Fed pledged a $2 trillion stimulus package, as well as announcing unlimited purchasing of government bonds. Emergency tending packages of $1,200 were also used. The results were incredible. 40 million unemployed, the market's up. 100,000 dead worldwide. Priced in. Almost $1 trillion added to the national deficit in 1 month. Spy 300. By simply taking the print button down, Jay Powell had ended the crash instantly, and the world's financial system was back to normal. And thank God for us. Excessively printing money to counterbalance economic issues has never had unintended consequences. Bears were absolutely brutalized. Tens of thousands of goods reduced to ash instantly. People on the subreddit would continue to remain bearish for a couple of months, but as things worsened, and the market kept rising, one by one, they fell. By late May, it was over. Even for 40 million Americans unemployed, the Nasdaq had surpassed the pre-crash peaks of late 2019. The Dow Jones Index wasn't far behind. The bears had lost. It had been a rocky few months for the world in general, but things were finally improving. The economy had made a full recovery, the virus had completely gone, and the world was back to normal.
Everyone says I should fight my cravings. No. You know what I do? I snack on blue diamond. Oh, come on. Sriracha? Wow. Don't fight your cravings. Eat them.
All the flavors you crave. In a superfood, Blue Diamond Almonds, crave victoriously.
This video was sponsored by Skillshare. To quote the great Stephen Hawking, Life on Earth is about Life on Earth is about a 6. Honestly, sometimes it's hard just to get through the week without hearing those 2 horrible words. No, climate change. I recently realized I don't know much about climate change at all. To many of us, it's just this all-encompassing term for bad shit we're endlessly told to worry about. Today, I'm going to explain the facts about climate change using normal words, without telling you what to think, and without using this fucking diagram. I won't even tell you to go vegan. And that's a promise. Excuse me? Humans obsessively keep track of everything going on Earth. From the exact amount of water a carrot plant needs to thrive, to the likelihood of being mortally wounded by a tumble dryer. I mean, we measure raindrops in deserts, whiskers missing from kittens, how toxic is copper, are gloves warmer than mittens. This video has been demonetized for copyright infringement. Where I'm going with all this is one thing humans have been pretty obsessively measuring for the past 100 years is Earth's temperature. And a great example of this is the British East India Company. Bet you didn't see that one coming. At its peak at the start of the 19th century, this company had a total of around 450 ships in service over a period of about 40 years. These ships travelled all over the Atlantic and Ocean. And you know what they were doing, other than promoting England's tyrannical occupation of India and further propagation of the slave trade? Well, most, if not all of their ships, were taking daily measurements of their exact location, wind speed, air pressure, and we've actually gained, using the logs on these boats, 270,000 different weather and climate records from the late 1800s and the early. It wasn't just the British East India Company. clearly just didn't have much else going on. Sushi hadn't been invented yet, so what else was there to do? Water over here, water over there, and if you look down, well, golly God, it's some pints of wood. Better measure the wind speed again. Here's a random entry from the Dutch ship's logbook the day they encountered another British. Yeah, as well as writing a fucking dissertation on, I don't know, cogs, they somehow found the time to draw a picture of the ship so detailed you wonder how they got anything else done.
So we're under attack. Wait, I'm just gonna get this line right. So it's all over. It's just these fucking sails.
So what we found from our frankly obsessive measuring of the planet is that over the last 100 years or so, things look like they have been getting warmer. This graph shows. What this generally means is as we go back in time on this graph, it looks like the Earth is on average getting colder. And as we go forward in time, it looks like it's on average getting hotter. The thing is, how do we know what the reason is? Well, to work it out, let's look at the kind of things that can cause temperature increases on Earth. Let's start with the most obvious one. Sun. Sun. So how do we know the sun isn't just getting warmer? No, don't tell me. We've been measuring it, haven't we? Oh, get a life, NASA. More like never at the bar. Assholes. NASA have actually been using satellites to measure the amount of energy reaching Earth from the sun since the late 1970s. This graph also tells us that we've not really seen a noticeable increase in the energy from the sun since around the 1970s. If we have to change the temperature, fine. We see the average surface temperature of the Earth has been steadily increasing, while the amount of energy we get from the sun has actually been slowly decreasing. We have data going back to the 1880s. Humans have accurately kept an eye on the number of dark spots for 100 years. These are apparently cooler areas of the sun, so it can be fairly accurately used to estimate the average temperature of the sun going back.
What are you doing, Copernicus? Measuring the number of dark spots on the sun. Why though?
I have no idea. I'm pretty blind now. So another possible reason we're seeing an increase in our temperature is that the Earth is warming up as part of its natural cycle, and we're now at a time where the Earth should just be getting warmer. This seems perfectly reasonable too. So here's a graph of how the Earth's temperature has changed over the last 800,000 years. Excuse me, what? I bet you're wondering how that was ever worked out. Well, do you know how we found that 5,000-year-old man buried in ice? There's a deal. I'm pretty sure that's not how you pronounce that. By looking at it, we learned loads about what humans were like 5,000 years ago. And we can do a similar thing with Earth's temperature. Very old ice. If we can find ice that's 800,000 years old, we can actually learn about what the temperature on Earth was like when that ice froze. The ice in Greenland and Antarctica is perfect for this because it actually goes down miles. The further you go down, the older the ice gets. As we go down too, we also see different layers, different years the ice gets. Like how the ring of the tree. Hey, if you should we go back to 100,000 years, we have to dig for miles and miles to see the ice. That would be party. So what do you do? I'm an investment banker. I dig out and examine miles of ice cores found deep in Antarctica and use to measure the Earth's temperature. Yes, please. We can also do something similar by looking at the very old shells of animals in the layers of sediment under the sea. This has left us with a pretty good idea of what the temperature on Earth has been like for the last 800,000 years. And without a doubt, it's all over the damn place. Surprisingly, the Earth does not like to stay the same temperature at all. And it definitely wasn't humans who jumped 800,000 years ago by suddenly driving their cars to work, unless Dutzy here has been hiding something. I knew it! So the increase in the Earth's temperature we're seeing right now could just be one of those jumps we've seen loads of before. So to know if that's the case, let's look into what is these big changes in the past. And to answer that, we need to look at the language which were invented by William Design.
You see all you need to get whether it's keeping your office or redesigning our business. Let's go. Buy online and pick up in store. Get free next business day shipping at Office Depot, Office Max, and OfficeDepot.com.
Look at the graph that instead specializes on the Earth's temperature changes over only the last 100,000 years. Here, this one is less nightmarish to look at. If we look closely at this, we can see the Earth's temperature follows a pattern every 100,000 years or so, where it starts around the temperature we are now, then gets colder for around 90,000 years, which is called a glacial. Then it gets warm for about 10,000 years, which is an interglacial. This is basically where we are now. Things then sort of repeat themselves, and this is how we roll. This is honestly a little bit crazy. Most of the time, the Earth is actually 5 to 10 Celsius colder than it is today. In the grand scheme of things, it's like the Earth has popped the heating on for a few hours and the entire human civilization has developed before it's had a chance to cool down. I mean, for 90,000 years until roughly 10,000 years ago, Canada was almost... Why does this cycle? Well, that's where Milankovitch and his cycles. The Milankovitch cycles are all about the Earth and its orbit as it here is the Earth going around the sun. I know what it's called. If we look at it, we can see it has something called elliptic. The fuck did you just say to me? This just means the Earth tilts. You see, the Earth is actually slightly tilted. So instead of the top and the bottom of the Earth getting the exact same amount of sun at any one time, it actually varies. In July, for example, the top half of the Earth is the sun. This means the upper hemisphere gets far more lower, which gives that part of the world the sun. The opposite is true for the lower hemisphere too, of course, which is why Australia has the freaks. The thing is, our tilt is the same. The Earth actually goes from a tilt of 22.1 degrees to 22.5 degrees back again. And this all happens in a cycle. Its whole tilt to its maximum and back again only takes 41,000 years. Oh, blink and you'll miss it. It tilts like this because the other planets that travel around the solar system actually tug on the Earth with their gravity, causing it to down. This is very important. When the Earth reaches its maximum tilt of 25, it makes things even more extreme. Summer. This situation of high Earth tilt is what causes the planet to get warmer, ending glacial periods and causing spiky increases. An example of this was around 10,000 years ago. And around that same time, we saw the end of the glacial period going on, and the Earth suddenly got nice and hot, and we were able to properly set up shops. There are a few other things about our orbit that change that result in these sorts of events, but the blip is generally. Based on this theory, then, it's sensible to say that perhaps we are getting warmer because the Earth's tilting more. Sun. The issue with this, though, is we just had our maximum tilt 10,000 years ago when that glacial period ended. We are now actually tilting away from the sun again. The takeaway from all this, though, is that our tilt changes very slowly. A change of just 2 degrees takes almost 20,000 years. Like the sun, the Earth is incredibly stable most of the time, and things change very slowly. As the Earth comes out of its glacial periods, like we discussed, its temperature rises by about 4 to 7 degrees. And this generally happens over the course of about 5,000 years. In the past 100 years on Earth, we've seen our temperature rise by about 1 degree. This means things are getting hotter roughly 10 times faster than we would at a time where things look like they should be getting a little bit colder. It's like putting your ice cream in the freezer, then opening it later only to find it's caught fire. So we've had a good look so far at the Earth's temperature in the past, but haven't really found anything definitive that can explain this sudden increase we've seen over the last 100 years. The next big theory we can talk about relates to the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere, since no one's really talked about that one much yet. Granted, you hear a lot about CO2 nowadays. Well, it all starts with the sun. Very hot. Right, that's that one off the list. What's next? Oh, magnifique. The sun keeps us pretty warm, but strangely, it's not enough to really go. On Earth, if we didn't have an atmosphere, our average temperature would actually be around -Celsius. This is mainly because at night, when the sun isn't facing us, we would lose all our heat to the cold, unforgiving depths of space and freeze to death. Jolly good. The reason we stay toasty is because there are certain gases that surround us. Gases. The main gases are, of course, Now, you would be right in thinking that these gases float away in space, but you see, the Earth is very big. What's back my ass and call me Caesar? Because the Earth is so big, its gravity holds in all these gases around it, and they can't escape. These gases that surround us absorb heat energy from the sun, or heat energy that the Earth gives off, a little bit like the sun. Then after a while, they shoot it all back out again in all directions, and the Earth soaks up some of the energy. This means the Earth gets much more fire, and things are a lot warmer than they would be without these gases. As a result, the average temperature on Earth is about 15 Celsius, and we can live on it. Basically, without this layer of gases and their warming effect, we would just be an icy ball floating around in the space. We'd be like Mars, and you saw what happened to Jason Bourne there. He had to fertilize his own clothes. So that's how CO2 works. And as we've discussed, humans just can't stop measuring things. So here's a graph showing how the CO2 concentration on Earth has changed going back 800,790 BC. What is this? Someone's address? Sorry, no, this just means this graph is going back 800 years. But again, how do we know how much CO2 was actually in the Earth's atmosphere going back to time? Well, you know we dug up all that ice in the past like 8,000 years. Well, that ice, just like all of ice, has got little bubbles of gas inside it. So the older the ice, the older the gas trapped inside it. So all we need to do is extract the air from very old ice, analyze the amount of CO2, and that gives us a snapshot of what happens to the Earth like when that ice froze. Now, interestingly, when we look at this graph closely, we find that over the last 800,000 years, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere and the average seem to be very quick. Generally, when the temperature of the Earth goes up, so does the concentration of CO2, vice versa. But if we were to overlap these graphs like some sort of mad graph scientist, then zoom in, we'll see something. Now, I've tried to shield you from particularly great graphs so far. This one, I'm removing the bag. This is a graph of the warming that took place at the end of the last glacial period. The red line here is the temperature of the Arctic, and the blue line is the Earth's CO2 concentration. When the Earth warmed up 20,000 years ago, you can see that it first got warm, then CO2 levels started to rise. We can see a similar thing here in this equally unpleasant graph. In several instances over the last 800,000 years, it seems the Earth's temperature first drops, then the levels of CO2 increase. What all this appears to mean is CO2 does not drive the Earth.
Holy fuck, it's a smoking gun! This is a very important point, especially if you're skeptical of current claims that CO2 is what is causing the rise. You see, if we look at what's going on today, it looks like CO2 levels start to increase in the 1800s, and then we began to see an increase in the Earth's temperature shortly after.
To understand everything that's going on, let's look into the temperature rise at the end of the last glacier. As we discussed, this is like a language cycle making the sun. But what does this have? Well, the answer to this can be explained using code.
Finally. Okay, so here is a code we have code. This represents the figure, the language cycle, and here, what? This is slightly warm code. This represents the Earth after the language cycle. Now, before we start our experiment, we need to know that gases can dissolve in water in almost the exact same way solid. Coke is effectively just flavored water, lots of CO2 dissolved in it, and this makes it bubbly. When we open it, CO2 comes out of the liquid and escapes as gas. But a fascinating property of most liquids, the colder they are, the more gas dissolved into them. This is just a law of nature, explained in a graph. Chemistry, but it's bullshit, so don't study it. I really hate physical chemistry.
So when I open the cold pan ASMR style, we have to notice CO2 release. I really didn't think that would work.
This is because water can't hold up as much gas as cold liquid. This is why water can't give off gas.
What I'm getting at here is that after the Blankovich cycle has caused the Earth to warm up a little, the seas would have had to start releasing more of the CO2. It's warmer, can't hold on. Gas. This is likely to be part of the reason why we see an increase in CO2 on Earth just after we see it. This is also quite relevant. Starting the end of the glacial period actually needs quite a bit of tilting and expansion. You see, many of the recent glacial periods have lasted around 20,000 years, coming out of the second to require a bit of expansion. So what happens? The Earth is slightly less time. This then causes the CO2. This CO2 the Earth's greenhouse effect making it, which in turn causes the seas to release even more CO2. Things very quickly again. This is demonstrated on this graph here. This graph also shows the Earth in the end of the last glacial period, like the one we saw before. But this one is a little detailed. It uses every method we have available to estimate the Earth's average temperature as so here the CO2 levels in the atmosphere are listed as yellow dots, and the blue line is the Earth's average temperature. If we look closely, the Earth's temperature once this rise did happen, CO2 level. Temperature and CO2 level seem right? One has so this is probably why scientists are getting their knickers. Wait, if we look back 800,000 years, we see the Earth's CO2 concentration. And ppm just being a bit. But in just the last 100 years, CO2 levels have increased over 400, meaning the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is now 33% higher than we've ever known to be in the last 1,000 years. Shortly after this CO2 increase, we've also seen a temperature rise on Earth of around 1 Celsius that has happened 5 to 10 times faster than any other global. This change to our temperature is happening though we are tilting away from the sun. The amount of solar energy hitting the Earth each year is still huge. So clearly carbon is one sick son of a bitch. Where is it all coming from? And is it really the only thing? There's a fancy graph on Bloomberg that does quite a colourful job of it. That's what matters. No need for a paper bag here. This graph first shows the temperature changes we've seen on Earth since 1880. It then maps on the same graph a collection of. Here, for example, is the estimated cooling the sun's orbit will have had on our temperature over the same period. The same has been done for the effects of volcanoes, deforestation, land use, and ozone. All of these effects combined don't seem to show any significant impact on CO2 temperature. Based on what we know about CO2, how it has affected our temperature in the past, and a lack of any other culprit, CO2 is generally the most likely to be increase in the Earth's temperature seen in the last year. In that case, then, it's why the level of CO2 in the atmosphere are increasing so much. And if you were to go with what everyone else is saying, you'd probably fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are basically plants and animals that died millions of years ago. Over time, these animals sank to the ground and eventually. This happens because all of them, and plants and animals too, are making carbon. That's what people mean when they say we need carbon. When we burn these carbon-based fuels, carbon and reacts with oxygen. Carbon dioxide fades, circle of life. But the reason a lot of people say burning fossil fuels will CO2 in the atmosphere is we only really started burning the bulk around this sort of time period. This is when trains and factories really started burning. Very shortly after, when we started to see the increase in CO2 in the atmosphere, but again, how do we know it's fossil fuels that cause this increase in CO2? It could just be with it. Well, there is a fact about the air around that makes it like. You see, when air floats up into the sky, it actually absorbs cosmic space. This eventually causes the air to make a very small amount of carbon that is radioactive. This is called carbon fatigue, and the fresh air around it. Now, the carbon in fossil fuels, however, has been trapped away underground. This carbon hasn't seen cosmic rays for a very long time, so contains almost no carbon. This also means whenever fossil fuels burn, they produce CO2 gas and no carbon. This graph shows that the average amount of carbon present in our atmosphere is over time we take a look. This indicates that the atmosphere is being filled with carbon dioxide at a much lower level. And the most likely source of CO2 is fossil. Even more interestingly, we were only able to measure this, which is when we started detonating. Because these bombs make the air around us substantially radioactive. That's right, Quark. We really fucked up. There are also atoms of carbon in the air that actually tell us similar things to carbon. These levels aren't affected by something like a bomb. So we can see here carbon-13 levels in the atmosphere have also dropped steadily in the same way carbon. So if all this theory is true, then it's all carbon's fault. Oh no, I'm making it worse! The main thing I've noticed about climate change is only ever describes this bad news, serious faces, and warnings that we're completely fucked unless every human on Earth goes vegan overnight, and then we're told eating more avocados is socio-politically worse than pounding a kilo of cocaine after every meal, so I don't know what to think. Avocado toast? Cocaine toast? Why not have butter? The Earth will be currently set to do so based on the current amount of CO2 producing, find a variety of. Well, there's no need to go into Yes, though a few examples would be the ice cap melting will likely cause widespread flooding. Large areas will get too hot to live and grow food, and forest fires will get far free. Stuff like that. Trying to reduce the amount of CO2 we make good, but what do we change? Everything? Go full into the wild and eat nothing but sweet peas and starve to death with a tear of happiness in our eyes that we did the right thing? A lot of the information and graphics coming up were provided by Dr. Simon Clark, and if you're interested in these types of videos, he makes them a lot more relevant. So please do have a look. Here's a rough breakdown of where CO2 comes from. See, if we're going to trim things down, we must first inspect the stem. The main thing to note there is that 72% of our CO2 emissions energy. Energy use is such a big chunk because so much of our energy is burning big bad energy. Fossil. If we expand this use to the 40% chunk, burning of fuels such as natural gas, which fossil fuels, a whole 70% is also transit. Here is the area we focus on first. We must actually use less fossil and more renewable energy. Now, this all sounds like a lot of fairy tale perfect world shit where we power cars on princess baths and happy thoughts. But if we look into it, renewable energy, stuff like biofuel, solar panels, it's called renewable. Set up, it can be. We take energy like the sun. We don't have to dig giant holes in the ocean or deserts to find coal or suck up oil, and we have an endless source of low. And that's because renewable energy is not this economic hole. In 2016, fossil fuel subsidized $360 billion by governments to keep it under par, versus renewable, which is the amount. Renewable energy subsidized less than half of fossil, even though in America renewables are by far the fastest growing. Solar energy is the fastest growing. And because it makes economic sense, in 2016, 26.5%